Since the beginning of 2024, North Korea has declared an end to its pursuit of reunification with South Korea, which marks a historic shift in its diplomatic posture. This announcement abruptly concluded decades of bilateral efforts aimed at peaceful reunification. Now, subsequent to this declaration, North Korea intensified its military activities with an immediate increase in missile tests. On March 18th, under the supervision of Kim Jong-un, North Korea conducted a live-fire exercise involving nuclear-capable multiple rocket launchers. But that's not all. This was swiftly followed by the testing of a new hypersonic intermediate-range missile capable of traveling at velocities exceeding 5 times the speed of sound. And this is kind of worrying, because the frequency and sophistication of these missile tests underscored a significant escalation in the North's military capabilities. Over the past decade, North Korea has been fortifying its alliances with major powers such as Russia, China, and Iran, while concurrently enhancing its nuclear arsenal. These actions have solidified its status as a formidable regional power, heightening concerns in the Western world about a potential invasion of South Korea. Now, if they do that, which obviously would be very aggressive, there's a lot of fear about potentially reigniting the Korean War, which could draw in global superpowers and exacerbate the conflict. Now, despite these aggressive military demonstrations and the growing threat perception, there remains a palpable hesitance within North Korea regarding a direct military engagement with South Korea. This reluctance is rooted in the complex historical, political, and military dynamics of the Korean Peninsula. The division of Korea into North and South dates back to the aftermath of World War II, following the defeat of Japan, which had annexed Korea in 1905. In the ensuing political vacuum, Korea was partitioned along the 38th parallel by the United States and the Soviet Union. By 1950, tensions had escalated into a full-scale war, which persisted for 3 brutal years until a truce was declared in 1953. Now, despite this ceasefire, the peninsula has technically remained in a technical state of war, marked by intermittent skirmishes and a robust North Korean nuclear deterrence policy. In 2000, and again in the year 2007, both nations seemed poised for reconciliation, expressing intentions for peaceful reunification. This sentiment was further amplified in 2018 with the Panmunjom Declaration, where leaders from both Koreas committed to officially ending the Korean War and pursuing denuclearization. However, the tide turned as North Korea began perceiving increased military collaborations between the US, South Korea, and Japan as direct threats. And these included large-scale military drills near the peninsula, most notably a significant missile defense exercise in April 2023. Yeah, they didn't really like that. Since the start of the Russia-Ukraine conflict in February 2022 and subsequent regional disputes such as the Israel-Hamas clashes in October 2023, global focus has shifted, overshadowing North Korea. This shift has stalled negotiations aimed at easing the severe economic sanctions on North Korea. In response to what he perceives as provocations by the US and South Korea, including large-scale military drills near the Korean Peninsula, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has asserted these actions threaten his country's security. While Kim suggests that these maneuvers compel him to escalate his military posture to force the US into negotiations, the reality suggests a limited probability of North Korea initiating outright aggression against South Korea. North Korea's military, despite its portrayed strength, would find itself significantly challenged by South Korea's forces. North Korea boasts an impressive army size of 1.2 million active personnel, which is more than double South Korea's 555,000, and a Special Forces division estimated at 200,000, vastly outnumbering that of even the US. It also maintains a larger arsenal of tanks and naval vessels. This military might is supported by an intense spending strategy that prior to the Russia-Ukraine conflict reached 33% of its GDP, superficially signals a formidable force. However, We need to realize that South Korea's strategic advantages substantially counterbalance these figures. With a reserve force of 2.7 million compared to North Korea's 600,000 and a population twice the size of the North's, South Korea is well prepared to mobilize and sustain forces in a prolonged conflict. Technologically, South Korea has the upper hand, benefiting from advanced weaponry and support from the United States. This includes K-2 Black Panther tanks, K-9 Thunder howitzers, and KF-2 fighter jets. In contrast, North Korea relies on outdated Soviet-era equipment and infrastructure. Now, the most consequential factor in North Korea's arsenal is its nuclear capabilities, with estimated warheads ranging from 35 to 65. South Korea, lacking its nuclear weapons, relies on strategic protection from U.S. nuclear submarines. So it's kinda like South Korea has nukes, even though they might not technically. This arrangement aims to counterbalance the North Korean threat. However, the predominant use of North Korea's nuclear assets is for deterrence, designed to prevent any potential invasion from the South, or to thwart external threats to the Kim regime. The deployment of nuclear weapons in offensive maneuvers would likely provoke severe retaliatory measures from the United States. To counteract the North Korean nuclear threat, South Korea has developed a comprehensive strategy known as the Three-Axis System. This offensive strategy consists of three principal components: the kill chain, the Korea Air and Missile Defense (KAMD), and the Korea Massive Punishment and Retaliation (KMPR). So let's talk about those things a little bit more. Initiated in 2012, the kill chain focuses on preemptive strikes against North Korean nuclear and missile capabilities, intended to be activated swiftly to neutralize imminent threats. Meanwhile, the KAMD serves as a defensive layer, intercepting incoming missile attacks. Most crucially introduced in 2016, the KMPR aims to dismantle North Korean leadership and military command through targeted strikes, placing the Kim family directly at risk. This strategy not only serves as a protective measure, but also as a deterrent, signaling to North Korean leadership the immediate personal dangers of initiating an attack. South Korea is basically signaling that no one would be safe. Furthermore, South Korea benefits from robust alliances, notably with the United States, which significantly enhances its strategic posture. The United States forces Korea, with approximately 28,000 troops stationed across various military branches since 1957, exemplifies a sustained American commitment to South Korean security. This presence not only ensures a rapid response to any North Korean aggression, but also serves as a potent deterrent, complicating any potential North Korean plans for invasion due to the immediate risk of U.S. military intervention. More crucially, the presence of these troops serves as a potent deterrent under the tripwire strategy. Let's talk about that. This strategy, which is a holdover from the Cold War era, ensures that any North Korean attack that harms U.S. soldiers would be perceived as an attack on the United States itself, prompting a comprehensive military retaliation that could devastate North Korean military aspirations. Additionally, the continuous joint military drills between the U.S. and South Korea enhance their interoperability and readiness, reinforcing the deterrent effect. These exercises, conducted regularly, ensure that both militaries are well prepared to repel any potential North Korean offensive. Beyond the immediate vicinity, North Korea must also contend with other regional powers like Japan. Located just over 500 kilometers from North Korea, Japan has increasingly viewed Pyongyang as a direct security threat, particularly after a North Korean missile flew over Japanese territory in August 2017, an act described by the Japanese Prime Minister as unprecedented. Yeah, imagine your neighbor throwing a missile over the fence in your backyard. You probably wouldn't like that, right? In response, Japan has aligned more closely with the US and South Korea, strengthening security ties significantly, especially in light of North Korea's aggressive posturing and China's broader geopolitical ambitions. But there are some things that complicate this a bit. While North Korea enjoys the support of powerful allies such as China and Russia, the reality of these relationships is complex. China, North Korea's most significant ally and economic lifeline, provides substantial support to Pyongyang, seeing it as a buffer against U.S. influence and the proximity of U.S. allied forces. Despite ideological and economic ties, China's strategic interests lie in regional stability. An overt military conflict involving North Korea would risk destabilizing the entire region, potentially drawing Chinese, US, South Korean, and Japanese forces into a direct confrontation. Consequently, China's likely course of action would be to prevent any military engagement by North Korea. Given that China accounts for a substantial portion of North Korea's external trade, its influence over Pyongyang is considerable. In a scenario where regional stability is threatened, China would probably advise North Korea to de-escalate, leveraging its economic influence to enforce compliance. Russia's relationship with North Korea, although consistent under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, represents its own complexities. The two leaders have met multiple times, most recently in Russia's Far East in September 2023, to discuss expanding their bilateral ties. Despite these meetings, the true nature of their alliance is pragmatic rather than ideological. Russia, embroiled in its own conflict in Ukraine, has relied on North Korea for military supplies, including a notable transaction in September 2022 where Russia acquired millions of rockets and shells from North Korea. This transaction underscores their mutual interest rather than a formal alliance. Moreover, in a move that contravened a UN resolution, Putin gifted Kim a high-end armored limousine earlier in the year, signaling a deepening but complicated relationship. Despite this apparent closeness, Russia's primary focus is on Ukraine, especially following significant US financial support to Ukraine. And honestly, that limits its capacity to support North Korea in any significant military conflict with South Korea. However, the most formidable threat to Kim Jong-un, should he consider aggression against South Korea, is not external but rather internal. North Korea's socio-economic landscape is fraught with challenges. Years of international isolation and domestic mismanagement have led to widespread economic hardship and social unrest. Despite the regime's attempts to portray strength, internal reports suggest a populace grappling with severe shortages of essentials like food and fuel. In response, the regime has made some economic concessions, improving living standards in certain areas. Yet this liberalization is not uniform, with many regions, particularly outside Pyongyang, continuing to suffer under stringent controls. The domestic stability is further compromised by a pervasive surveillance system that enforces compliance through community and familial monitoring. The regime's policy of intergenerational punishment for dissent amplifies the risks for those daring to oppose the regime, effectively stifling opposition. Under such a regime, even the most courageous individuals are deterred from activism by the potential repercussions on their families, ensuring the perpetuation of Kim's authoritarian rule amidst growing discontent. However, embarking on a large-scale military offensive against South Korea could intensify existing economic strains, potentially deepening North Korea's internal crises. Such a move might ignite the fuse for revolutionary sentiments among the populace. The prospect of war could exacerbate social unrest as citizens confront the harsh realities of conflict. The Kim dynasty has long relied on a combination of coercion, propaganda, and strategic brinksmanship to maintain its power, portraying the United States as a malevolent, imperialist aggressor and South Korea as its subservient ally. This narrative has been crucial in fostering a climate of fear and loyalty among the North Korean people, convincing them of the imminent threat these nations pose to their sovereignty. However, an unprovoked attack on South Korea would shatter this carefully constructed image, positioning North Korea as the belligerent party and undermining the regime's claim to be the protector of its people. Such a scenario, coupled with the potential for a protracted and bloody conflict, could sow the seeds of dissent within the populace. If the invasion were to fail, The consequences for the regime's credibility and internal stability would be disastrous. The harsh reality of defeat, along with the immense human and economic cost, could dismantle the myth of the ruling family's invincibility. This could catalyze widespread rebellion, potentially toppling Kim Jong-un's authoritarian rule. While North Korea continues to escalate its nuclear missile capabilities, signaling readiness for a full-scale conflict, it's improbable that it will initiate such a conflict. More likely, Pyongyang will opt for escalated military demonstrations, possibly including overt nuclear missile tests to deter US and South Korean advances. In this high-stakes geopolitical game, Kim Jong-un must acknowledge the limitations of his military power against the superior forces of his adversaries. For the time being, despite the bluster, North Korea is unlikely to launch an invasion against South Korea, as the regime's survival depends on maintaining a delicate balance of fear and control within its borders.